So you know those conversations that kind of happen at an event quickly? That's this one for me. Back in January, we were at the Tampa show, and there's an event called the Content Creators Event that Josh Sheehan puts on. It's kind of special because he brings all sorts of creators all over the place, and RV Roofing Solutions, our business, is actually there doing what we do. That's where I actually met Ron. Josh would tell you the magic's in the actual meetup later and what that connection means. The thing that struck me the most about Ron was not anything but his business card. His business card is so different because he 3D prints them, and they're fantastic, and they look just like him. So if you ever get handed a business card by Ron, you know that you'll have him with you wherever you go. But the road life is a beautiful, unpredictable place. It's taken us this long to finally create this episode, but I'm finally delighted to welcome Ron the Nomad to the podcast today. We've featured a lot of solo travelers on the show before, men and women that bring the solo travel to their lifestyle, but you're even more different than that one. It's kind of extraordinary, actually, your story. Today's a first. So today's not just about a solo traveler, although you do it kind of solo as a parent. You're a solo dad. And so out here on the road with your kiddo, just the two of them building a life that most people just kind of dream about. So let's dive right into that. What made you hit the road with your kid?
It sort of happened organically in a way. I have an adult daughter. She's in her 20s, late 20s now, and she's got her own family now. At the beginning of our travels in 2017, 2018, we were part-time. We bought a rig because she was moving to Arizona. We bought a rig so we could go visit them for longer periods of time. My job allowed me to work remote often. It was like a 75% remote kind of a situation. And so we would do a month in the summer, and we would go travel to Arizona. We went up to Seattle to see my cousin. We did some of these part-time jaunts over the course of a year or so, a couple of years, to 17 to 19. And then we all know what happened in 19 and 20, so we don't need to go into that. But that sort of just encouraged the whole idea of I'm just going to take that rig to my home base, my parents' farm in Illinois, and we'll just live out there. We'll live the duration of this sea thing for however long it goes, right? And so I set that rig up to be more full-time. And we made another trip to Arizona. We ended up upgrading the rig to a bigger rig, a Class A. And more or less the rest is history at that point. From 20 to 21, we traveled from Arizona through California, back up to Seattle, back to the Midwest. We did that cycle 2 or 3 times as we started our full-time life. And then we connected with Full-Time Families, a traveling group that we all know and love. We've been connected with them in the 5,000 members they have for several years now.
And I think that most people don't know that we are 13 years full-time. I don't know how our kids haven't connected in that way because I still travel with teenage boys. I think it's just because of the nature of our business and everything that it makes it a little bit harder. But we do have to be intentional, especially with kids. My number for Full-Time Families is actually 36. I was one of the first ones, so it's crazy.
I just didn't know how anything of that founder of a member. Let's put it that way.
Well, and I might be one of the only ones left other than the Mans that actually still travels with kids on the road. So that's kind of an interesting one too. Before we go anywhere else, I want to go back to the beginning, not the RV beginning, but kind of, who were you before you hit the road?
I've been a technology person for 35 years. My career is based around technology. I grew up on a farm in rural Illinois, went to school, got out of school, went into technology straight out. Let's say since 2013, 2014, it's been my son and I. We lived in apartments. I went to work. I took him to school. My life was revolved around taking him to school, taking him to activities, visiting other family, and going to work. Majority of the time was the work. That was fine. It was the lifestyle that everybody lives, right? There's a lot of solo dads. There's a lot of solo moms in that lifestyle, and it sticks and bricks. When I realized through the time period we lived in 2000 and 2004 or whatever, that's a life that I didn't want to go back to. I continued the remote work with the company I was at until a year ago, almost to the day. I went full freelance into technology, into building my brand, into doing this lifestyle in a way that is not dependent on a 9-to-5 career, much more focused on what do I own and what I can provide to somebody else.
That's awesome. So what was the moment that shifted for you? So okay, let me give you my backstory. I had gotten invited down.
I was ready in 2017.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
So Frank was waiting for me. And so I had gone to a youth event. We did youth ministry for a bunch of years. The pastor called me and said, "Hey, Jen, everybody wants you down here for senior weekend. My oldest daughter is 31 now, but back then she was 18. So we took her down with my 2 youngest and went down for the weekend. And I went looking for a job for Frank because he was finishing Bible college. It made perfect sense. We'd go back to Oceanside, go back to our little perfect lifestyle, and go back to where I wanted to be with my kids. And I came home from that weekend and I said to Frank, "We're supposed to go full time on the road in an RV." And he said, "I've been waiting 7 years for you to say that." And so the rest is history. He sold the TV TV the next morning, and we hit the road less than 90 days later, and it was crazy and it was nuts, and we're still doing it 13 years later. So like, was there a defining moment for you like that, or was it like kind of more gradual?
It was definitely much more gradual. The defining moment, I would say, was that time where I had to make the decision of, well, there's no reason to stay in St. Louis. We were living in St. Louis in an apartment. We didn't need to go to school, and we didn't need to go to work physically. And so when we moved out to the farm in the motorhome and let the lease expire on our apartment, that was the defining moment in a sense. It was sort of organically going to happen at some point. I didn't know when. Nature just took its course, is the way I look at it, because I was already investigating RV lifestyle from 2016 till then, following several of the now still large creators in the space. Some I've met in person, which has been fantastic, to kind of like meet the person who inspired you and have a chance to talk with them. So in a sense, I want to be able to be that for somebody else too, like, and not just the RV sense, but in life. How we live isn't necessarily just going to happen. You have to be intentional about the actions you take. And if you have an idea and you want to do something, then you need to take an action on that idea, or you're just going to sit out there with a bunch of ideas doing nothing. I'm much more than I was before. You have to understand what your intentions are and take action on those intentions, like right now. Do something today, tomorrow, next week, to go in the direction that you want to go, even if it's tiny.
But with kids on the road, like, there's a whole nother layer.
Okay.
I think that we have to get out there and be intentional for them. I started out with toddlers to teenagers. My oldest son at the time was 13. And so we wanted to find friends for our oldest kid on the road. And so my oldest was 18 when we hit the road. She said, love you, mean it, see ya, bye, I'm out. And so she did not want any part of this lifestyle. She'd come home a couple years later and travel with us for a couple years. My younger ones were like,
she had that choice.
But my younger ones were like 15 months and 2 years old. I had a 5-year-old. I would say it was easy to find friends at the playground. There were other moms with toddlers or whatever, with kids that were playing together. And I feel like it was so much easier. As the kids have gotten older, I almost feel like it's harder for them to connect. So what do you do with intentionality? I know you guys are headed to a rally. What does that look like for you, being intentional?
So two things. I think it's actually three. One, I'm intentional, but only to a point. Like, I think he still has to want to. He still has to take his own actions. Like, I'll give him guidance and I'll give him coaching. And I'll be like, hey, so-and-so is over there. Or I know this other family has a kid who has these interests, right? And I'll share that with him. But he has to be the one to take the action. I'll go back to the second part. So when we first started, we had like our first campground rally, not really rally, just campground where there were a bunch of other kids I knew at there. We put out that we're going to play Monopoly tonight. We went to the event center at that campground and we set the Monopoly board and we invited all the teenagers. I sent it out. I said to like all the families that I knew in that campground. And I think we played Monopoly with 11 kids ranging from 10 to 17. And you can't play Monopoly with 17 kids. There's not enough money. There's not enough tokens. It doesn't work. But we figured it out and we all had a good time.
It's a good game for that, just so you know.
Okay. My kid was all into Monopoly at the time. And so Monopoly was like, I could definitely engage him. And I thought, well, maybe there's at least 2 other players who will want to play. But we met several friends now. Some we stay close to, some we don't, from that one experience. But that was an intentional action early on that just got it spurred, right? And we do that occasionally now, not as often. Maybe we could or should. But now he's found a group that he likes to hang with. And so to this week, when we just arrived here yesterday, I said, the goal for you is to add 4 people to your network. Tell me at the end of the rally, because I'm going to ask you, what are the 4 people you might consider adding to your network of friends that you're going to look for, talk to on a regular basis? I'm not expecting like best friend status. I'm just like, who do you think you could add to your network of somebody who you would like to spend time with sometimes? Because that helps us design travel plans. Because we used to design travel plans around theme parks. And we go to Six Flags, we go to Busch Gardens, or we go to SeaWorld. Like, where's the theme park that he wants to ride roller coasters at? If you have to pay for the actual ticket prices, it's expensive. But when you buy memberships nowadays, you can kind of just go in and go whenever you want.
We actually tooled our reservations and our education around that too, because we actually studied roller coasters that year on purpose. So velocity and all the things that went with that.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good classroom. Yeah.
And education anywhere is a great tool. But, when you're doing it at a theme park, you can find all sorts of things, from how fast are you spinning on the teacups to how fast do you have to go down the roller coaster.
Right.
So it's a great tool. People don't realize how much education is actually at a theme park.
Every opportunity when you go somewhere, there is a piece of information to share that's educational. That's why I love national parks. I love museums. I love going to zoos. We spent only a full year, 2021. Every time we landed in a city, we'd find the local zoo and whatever it was, and we would go. because it was like $20, right? And the local zoos are so inexpensive. And if you add to the idea that you can get the membership cards that help give you 50% off a lot of other zoos, those are all things that the average sticks and bricks human doesn't even know exists.
So at what point did you guys know that this was a lifestyle for you?
For me, it was sitting at Angel Point, New Mexico, south of Four Corners, about 2 miles off grid for 3 days, still doing my job. I had solar, I had internet, I had my job that was 9 to 5 at the time still, and we sat there virtually in the middle of the desert, overlooking this grand piece of nature, and I'm still able to function. There's no reason to go back to any office ever. I mean, I help people in offices, don't get me wrong. That's what I do. I don't have to be in an office to do that all the time.
And you can love what you do and still be where you are, and they can love what they do and go to their 9 to 5 if that's their dream, and I think that's okay for everybody. I think so many people wait. I think that those of us that didn't wait, we get judged for it sometimes. The truth is, when my 16-year-old was born, his grandpa died a week later in my house. My dad had cancer. He was 61. My dad never retired. And so for me, I don't know that weighed on my heart the same way it did years later when I said yes, but I'm sure it had some of that impact in the decision-making process finally of, don't wait, you're not promised tomorrow, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So by the way, if you hear us walking in the background of the audio, that's my parrot. We travel with 2 parrots.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't know if you can hear that in the mic.
You in person. No, I can't. I wish I could because I love birds. We actually lost one of our birds on the road. She flew out the window after she had made friends with a local bird, and that was in Ohio a couple years ago. And so I haven't replaced any of the birds. But yes, I love having birds on the road. We now just have frogs. That's a half a Frenchie, half a pug. Looks like a potato and runs around. What would you say you have learned or watched your son learn about being out here that you don't think he would have gotten in a traditional type of education?
He may not realize it yet, but I think what he's learning that I know I never did is the advance of the culture of America. You can go from one town to another town. Sometimes you're driving through the same town. If you live there, you wouldn't notice it because it's just how you live. When you drive through some towns, you can see the culture shift. So we lived in rural Illinois. Like St. Louis was the biggest city that we had, and that's where we lived most of his young life. But if we had stayed there, he would only understand St. Louis. He wouldn't understand LA. He wouldn't understand San Francisco. He wouldn't understand Austin or Dallas. And we've been to those major cities. We've done things in those cities. Orlando. He can navigate visually Orlando now because we've been there so often. As we drive around, we talk about why this building looks that way or why these people are walking instead of riding the transit bus or riding transit bus instead of driving a car because we've driven and been through those areas of the country. When you go into a store and you have to seek someone out who speaks a different language to speak your language, that's not something you're going to experience, at least not today anyway, in St. Louis. When you're in some of these other cities and states, you experience Hispanic culture differently. You experience Cuban culture differently. You experience Mexican culture differently, and that's all great. You don't experience that in St. Louis. If we were staying in St. Louis, you wouldn't have those experiences. He's picking up, and I think over time he's going to realize he does need to know multiple languages. I mean, I was told that in school. You should learn Spanish. You should learn French. Oh, French Canadians is another one. When you pull into an RV park sometimes in the winter, you might have 12 French Canadians next to you, and they don't speak English at all. How they survive down here, I don't know sometimes, but they do. It's 2 things. It brings experience, a layer of experience that they would not get anywhere else.
Absolutely.
But it also brings ability to be patient with people and slow down and be passionately helpful. They're helping you, you're helping them, you're figuring things out. It layers in a layer of resourcefulness that I think if you stay comfortable in your quote-unquote house, stay comfortable in your job, you don't experience some of that at the level that we do when we're traveling up road.
I would totally agree with that. People don't realize, like, culturally just how different kids become. And I've talked about this before. For us, our first year, we went back to where we bought a house. And so we bought a house in Yucca Valley the year after Frank retired. We moved out to a place that we thought we wanted to stay forever. And a year later, we hit the road. And then we put the house up on the market, and we found a renter that wanted to rent to own it, and we ended up selling the house in 2017. But the first year we went back, all the kids were like, my friends have changed. And as I watched those interactions, I realized their friends hadn't changed at all. Their friends were still from that town, and that was normal. They had changed. They had been exposed to more. They had experienced more. They had met more people. They had looked broader than their original horizon. And so even as a homeschool family, which we always homeschooled, my kids were never in public school. They were always homeschooled kids, but they were never sheltered, kind of like some homeschooled kids. And it's okay if you do shelter your kids. Like, I think every family has to make a decision that's right for them. But we realized very quickly that it was us that had changed, not anybody else. One of the questions everybody asks, ready for this one, is how do you make money on the road? And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's dive into how you do right now make money on the road. Because I think people want to know, is this life doable? Can I make money on the road? What does that look like for Ron?
It's doable. It's always a little bit challenging unless you've got something that you're focusing on. And I think that's where I do actually have some struggles, is I've learned I think I have adult ADHD. So I make money on 3 or 4 different things. And I think that's a common denominator with several travel families. There are some that focus on, there might be people who are travel nurses. There might be people who are entrepreneurs. They've got a business at home and they travel on the road and they go back to their business every now and again. I see several of those. For me, I run what I do here with us in the rig. The main money maker we have right now has been 3D printing. We do social media. I've built in the last year 5,000 followers on TikTok, and we're doing social media there with our own branding as well as the 3D printing branding. I've been working in the AI space, layering that on top of my automation and operations space that I did as a career. So I have 35 years in technology, in healthcare 15. The operational excellence from healthcare to a Main Street America. We're working on an AI agency to work with businesses, both nomadic as well as in-person businesses as we travel, to help them layer up their technology. What they do with technology today, even if they do anything, and a lot of them still don't do anything, they need to level up or they're going to get either bought out, put out of business, or lost. They'll go out of business. Unfortunately, there's a lot of retiring businesses, and the newcomers in are bringing some of their own technology stack with them, but some of the newcomers in are the buyers. If they're bringing in, I just want to buy it and buy another business and buy another business and then just own those. And the operations will not change that much except to just level up the cash flow. You need to have a strategy with innovation as an essential business in Main Street America. That's a direction that I'm working through. For now, for what we've been doing last year has been building personal brand, carrying forward my technology background, leveling up with AI, 3D printing, and on the side business, if you will, small community, researching genealogy. I have 25 years of researching my own genealogy. I bring that to the table not as a professional, but as another researcher who's just done the experience and saying, if you want to participate in the community and learn about how to use the tools that we have available to us today, which are crazy awesome, to research your family, let's do that together in this community. That's another thing that raises money. So I'm also part of a group of other traveling influencers where we have opportunities to connect and get video done for a campground or video done for a business. So that's another area where we're working on revenue. I keep my fingers in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, that was one thing that Frank and I learned. Our first year on the road, we went on the road with just his retirement. And if you know anything at all about the Marine Corps and being enlisted, we did that with 6 kids. And so halfway through almost every month, we were eating beans and rice for dinner for a week. No doubt it was going to happen. But we wanted the freedom of that. When we fell into RV roofing, Frank actually worked for a different RV roofing company. He told the owner of that company, you need me, I don't need you. And the owner looked at him and said, yeah, we're done here, and walked away. And if you get to know my husband, he's very sarcastic. He was raised in upstate New York and then spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. He's got a little bit of dark humor to him, and people either get him or they don't. But at the same time, he only meant that we owned our camper, we owned our van that pulled the camper, we had healthcare coverage, and we didn't have any payments. So we were just looking for some extra funding. Basically, the owner came back about 30 minutes later after talking to some other people and said, you're right, I need you. And so he worked for them till 2020 when we would get involved with RV roofing solutions. And what we knew then was we needed something in the industry that would help other people make money on the road. And so that was our heart in that. When I got Learn to RV last year, that's a whole nother level. Learn to RV was not a moneymaker. It was not even really monetized. Like, we're building it and bringing it back to life every day. So, you know, that community, it's not about me. It's about all of you guys that come on and support the community for me. It's such a neat opportunity to be able to highlight everyone else. You know, as somebody that has been doing this a long time that never wanted to be an influencer, if you will, it's a great way for me to just kind of give back to the community that I love so much. Let's take a short twist on this one if you're open to it. I'd love to talk about kind of faith and gathering of nomads because, you know, you and I are both members of that community community as well. That plays a role in your life. Shane's a great guy, and he's building something very real and authentic there. What drew you to that?
Sort of that. I mean, the real and authentic piece of it. I've enjoyed conversations with Shane and other traveling nomads who are part of the group. Being connected to faith on the road just aligns us with the faith that we had in our sticks and bricks. I didn't have faith involved in my life until I was an adult, until I was actually well into my adulthood, like 2000. So I was involved in Sticks and Bricks Church in early 2000s. That was my first real involvement with faith. Really, it was a good thing. And then there was a falling out.
And church splits are terrible and horrible. And community splits within the RV community can feel equally as
can be terrible also. Exactly. So I was away from it for a long time until my son, and putting him in private school with the Lutheran church, getting me engaged there, meeting some new pastors, some new driven people. It renewed something that I had lost for a while. And then when we hit the road, we separated from that church and that school because we weren't in St. Louis anymore. Basically just allowing myself to be in the presence of other faith-minded people is why I wanted to stay connected to Shane and Gathering Nomads, because then I can have a common thread of connection when I meet another nomad on the road who's part of the group, right? We can sit down, we have faith conversations, we can have spiritual conversations, we can go deeper comfortably because we start at a foundation.
Yeah, and in 2026, that's so important because I think that you don't start there so many times because you're afraid you're going to put someone off. I'll never forget my first year on the road. There were 13 families in Thousand Trails Orlando. We're Thousand Trails members. We have been since 2013.
Same.
There were 13 families, and some of those families were like Margie Lundy. So the Lundy Five was there, and we were there, and there's not a lot of them left that travel with their kids still. Some of their kids have grown up and grown out like my older kids have. My friend Melly came to me and she said, thanks. And I'm like, for what? She goes, just for never turning me into a project. And it absolutely destroyed me that she said that because I don't ever want to be that Christian that turns people into a project. I just want to love people where they're at. And it was such a moment for me that it defined who we would become on the road. And that's probably why we do it that way. That's one of the things I love about Shane is that he loves on everybody. He'll pray for anybody. He won't judge you for who you are. I think we need more of that as Christians in the world. I think if we did that, the world would be a better place if we could just let people be wherever they are in their journey spiritually, but still just love them for who they are. Sorry, I don't usually get sappy.
No, that's okay. That's a good story.
Let's talk and shift about friendship, which is equally sappy. What does that look like for you as a single dad?
I'm not gonna lie, it's challenging sometimes, especially early on when we first hit the road, and even still sometimes because you don't have the pair of family members to counterbalance what you think in your head. So there's a lot of head play in figuring out conversations. I've found a great community of guys that I'm able to connect with and family members, regardless of whether male or female, to connect with. It's unfortunate, but I've had to be extraordinarily intentional with that. Intentionally reaching out where it's uncomfortable. I'm much more of an introverted person, so I'm a person who can just sit here and just keep working all day long if nobody interrupts. And so I have to be intentionally interrupting myself and going and finding activities to engage myself in that might have other adult humans involved. Because I have a teenager who drags my other time elsewhere. And so if it's not involving him and it's not involving me and my mind doing my work, then I've got to make sure I'm using that time to engage with other adults. That sometimes is hard for me because I'm also a high-performing worker and I want to stay focused on what I'm working on. It's hard for me to distract myself, if that makes sense, from what I'm working on as a passion project or a work project to go out and quote-unquote make friends. Make friends would be easier if we were all sort of forced together into an office or into school. But that sucks because I don't want to be there either.
How this whole thing came up about friendship was Tasha and I were like, let's do an episode on friendship. Brought out so many things and we brought on Joni and she just launched her own podcast and we wanted to share kind of what that looked like. And halfway through Tasha's and my episode, we were talking about the ladies connecting and how hard and how catty it can be. And, I'm super authentic and very real. And so if somebody says something, I'm going to call them out on it. But that doesn't always work well in a friendship situation. At the same time, I'm the person that I would want you to tell me where I'm struggling and be honest with me because that's just who I am. And I have much better relationships a lot of times with guys than I do girls because guys are very real. They're very open and they're going to be more honest with you. Hey, that's offensive. Don't say that. They'll just come back at me like that. Where women will like bite their tongue, but then they'll talk about you later. And so I think that on the road that presents its own set of challenges, but we're halfway through that episode and Tasha goes, well, what about the guys? How are we going to talk about the guys connecting? And I was like, I know just the person to do a community spotlight with to start off this episode because I think it's an amazing opportunity to talk about both sides of that coin. But you have a unique situation. My husband has a unique situation, but there's a lot of military military guys out there. He speaks Marine Corps. So like when we would go to church, people would come to me and say, what did he say? And I'd be like, no, he's telling you what his job was. It's called his MOS. But I had to do that translation. So even in a group of real people, he sometimes has a hard time communicating because they don't understand his language unless those guys are all veterans, in which case, well, then he'll open right up, even though he's an introvert.
Some don't. So that's still rare. I think I talked to a lot of veterans. Younger veterans are more open, but older veterans are much more closed off. You have to really be intentional about your question to get them to start talking about something. Being in the genealogy space, I talk to a lot of veterans at times, trying to get them to open up about their history or their background. And it's really hard sometimes because they don't want to talk about it.
Frank doesn't talk about it with everybody, especially right away. So I'd say he has to be comfortable around you to get to that space. We have a friend, Jason Simpson. They're from the Simpson Six. They're one of the first families we met on the road. But Jason is a super extrovert like me. So Jason will take his cup of coffee and walk behind palm trees from one to the other to get your attention. He's a lot of fun to be around. The reality is that he knows Frank really well. And so that friendship is very special for us because when we are together, we're both all in it, if that makes sense. It's one of those things where it works out for us, but it sometimes takes Frank longer to meet someone. But I think that's true. I think that one of the things that we don't talk about enough is it's often not the first meeting on the road that you make that connection. It's the second or third, especially with kids, because teenagers don't want to invest in that friendship until they know that that friend is going to be there more than once.
Yeah.
If they're single,
that's a little bit true for adults too. I think that's a little bit true.
Why so?
At least maybe it's just me. Maybe that's my perspective. I think we do move a lot, and unless I'm intentional about keeping up with somebody, I don't know where they've gone or where next or where I might be going because I change my plans just as often as they do. So we have to really if you want to be a really close friend with someone, you have to make it an intentional friendship and be clear about that to make it work. Otherwise, you're very easily going to go off in your different directions and only reconnect again annually when you happen to be in the same campground again and say, oh, hey, how you doing? And you have to pass the how you doing stage to what's happening in your life. How can we help? What's the grand thing? What are you working on right now? That's another great one for guys. It's because they're always working on, most of us are always working on something. It may not be our career, it might be a hobby, but we're always working on something. So I think it's intentionally being part of and engaging and bringing value to the friendship as opposed to just saying hi and they pass.
No, I would agree with that. But single parenting
and to stretch my
so,
extrovert muscle.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I don't ever say that I was a single parent, but I did do deployments without my husband a lot. And so we have 7 children. A lot of those years are solo years. And I think there's something to that. But it's its own category, single parenting on the road. And I know a handful of single moms that do it, but it's hard. And so, we try to come alongside any one of those single moms. You and I met originally at the content creator event. My life is stupid busy lately. It never started out that way. But, at some point I would love to get our teenagers together because I think they probably have a few things in common based on what I know about you. But how do you make sure Ron is okay on the road? You personally, not the kid, not making sure that they've found the friends or are at an event. How do you take time for you? I mean, what fills your cup?
I'm always engaged in positive content. So I listen and I receive mentorship from some online people that I follow that are always feeding positivity. So it's not meditation so much as it is just listening to positive quotes, reading positive things, writing down and journaling what it is that was good today and not so much focusing on what was not working so well. There are times where that doesn't work, as it's just life, right? You can't go through life in a positive state 100% of the time. That's just not realistic. Because even if you are, there's still a piece you can pick apart if you really were to analyze your life a little bit. And so you just have to start to learn to be okay with realizing that that's okay. That thing that didn't work out the way you wanted it to worked out that way for a reason. And you learn something from it, then the next thing will go better. You start again tomorrow. If it didn't go well today, you got tomorrow to try again.
The longer we're on the road, the more complacent we can get in that way. I know winter went way too fast. And, we were down in Florida and I didn't do enough intentionality, even though I'm an extrovert and the kids are not. So I dragged the boys out. I know I didn't do enough of that because, the day was long. We'd recorded 4 sessions. Something got busy. The business was hopping. We had a rally, whatever. Taking the time to hang out with other people is critical for me. And so for me personally, I fill my cup with other people because I just like being around other people. That means for me, I'm probably going to the grocery store if you don't want to talk to me at night because there's somebody there that'll talk to me. I'm the girl that goes out to dinner so that we can talk to the waitress so so I don't have to have a conversation with my spouse unless we're going out with another, other people, because he's done. He's an introvert. He's filled his cup by a certain time of the day, and that's okay. If there's a single parent out there today that is on the fence of, can I do this? What would you say to them?
Take the small actions and get comfortable with those, and then do the next small action until you can do it. That's what you want to do. Just go take some action toward doing it. There's a lot of fears. Like there's stuff that would never come up in a conversation like you and I are having, or any of my other conversations, that were fears in the background of my head when we went and said, we're going to do this full time. Those things are just in your head. Let them stay there and let them leave, because they're not real. That's your imagination just screwing with your head to make you think you can't do it. And it's a lot of that in real life, but it's especially when you're trying to make a hard decision like this. Because it is kind of hard. Because you have to figure out, well, what am I going to do with all this property? What am I going to do with all this stuff that I have in a house? What am I going to do when my relative calls me out and says, why are you traveling when you should be at a career in the house? All these things that just roll over in your head all the time, they're not real. More than likely, the people who would ever say something like that aren't going to, because they're too uncomfortable to say it. They're actually going to be strongly in favor of you doing what you want to do, and you just don't realize that they're going to be in favor of it. They're more supportive than you think. Your friends, your family, you'd be surprised how supportive they are once they realize their why. That's actually a key point, and I probably should have brought that up. Understanding why you want to do something, whether it's traveling full time or anything else in life, understanding the why it's important to you, so you can vocalize that back to someone else when they ask you, why are you doing that dumb thing? Because that's what they think. Then you can clearly say, this is why. Well, that makes sense. Okay, I can support that. That's one of the first things I would recommend, is figure out why you want to do this, and clearly define that for yourself, and then clearly speak that back to somebody else, and you'd be surprised how supportive people are.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that coin is sometimes it takes people a little while to come around. I know for my mom, the first year, she was like, I don't know, that's a good idea. She came on the road with us for 2 years. She decided to go back to a house because this life wasn't for her. She also saw how we were thriving. I think that sometimes you just have to wait for your parents or your aunts, your uncles, your sister, your brother to come around and see that this is a good lifestyle for you. Doesn't mean it's going to be their lifestyle. It just means it fits you.
One last thing on that. I think two reasons why we have this. We have it because we watch other people who travel. Because if you're thinking about being in travel, you're probably watching YouTube or Instagram or of some other traveling family or some other traveling person. The reality is there's a lot of traveling influencers, a lot of traveling families that are on YouTube or on Instagram, and they're showing a lot of what looks to be a perfect lifestyle. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, it's not that perfect. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of great things, but there's a lot of challenges. It's not any different from that standpoint as a sticks and bricks house. When you go into a sticks and bricks house, you move from St. Louis to LA or Chicago, and you have to sort of rebuild your house. The water's not going to work. The heater might not work in the house. The air conditioner might not work. The roof might have a leak. All these things happen whether you're a travel family or you're in a house family. It just happens differently. There is not a perfect. You have to, again, come back to why do you want to do this and be okay with life that way and go forward. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Don't believe all the perfection you see out on social media. Behind that perfection is some things that they just didn't go right that day. And that's okay. Absolutely. They just don't want to talk about that. Some do. They do. There are some that do.
Well, Ron, this has been an amazing conversation. And I think that we could talk about having you back again for a different episode for sure. But where can our listeners find you and follow along your journey?
I'm going to be much more active on YouTube soon. So that's coming up in the next month or so. I have a Pillar account, pillar.io/ron.m.davis as a way to find like everything that we're doing, and anything that I'm doing that's new will get posted there first. That's probably the best place. Also, TikTok is probably the first social media place I would send somebody to. That's where I spend most of my energy right now, but that's also listed in the Pillar.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. If you're interested in Ron's story, make sure you like and subscribe to him. I know he's got a YouTube channel launching soon. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Learn to RV is about this community. If you're out there and you're thinking, I want a community that I can be involved in, Learn to RV could be that community. Last year, we started adding writers and YouTubers to our team. And so it's really easy to get involved that way. Once every 2 months, you just do some content for us and we share that content. And so if you can grow your audience, we'll grow your audience with you. And so it's just one more way that this community can make that connection, and Learn to RV can be about you, the person out there behind the screen. So I love that we get to bring people to you. And I'm fortunate that we know so many, but ultimately at the end of the day, I'd much rather just hang out with you around a campfire. See you next time. Thanks for joining us on Learn to RV, the podcast.